Then the author, rahimahullah, is going to go on to talk about the things that are permissible, which means a person doesn't get the sin for doing for a person who is fasting. And so he says, وَيَجُوزُ لِلصَّائِمِ السِّوَاكُ فِي جَمِيعِ نَهَارِهِ, yani that it is permissible for the person who is fasting to use the miswak fi jami'i naharihi, yani in all of, yani any time during the day. It's not limited to using it before dhuhr. And then he mentions wal madmadatu lil atash, that if a person has like a dry mouth, for example, then it is permissible for them to rinse their mouth. Or for a person who feels dehydrated, for example, it is permissible for them to make madmada, which is to put water in the mouth and swish it around, but obviously they're not permitted to swallow it. Wal isbahu bil janabati, and it is permissible to start your day of fasting while you are in the state of janaba, yani meaning that if a person were to have relations with the spouse just before Fajr, and the time for Fajr came in, which means the time for fasting entered, and a person was in the state of janaba, then that's permissible, meaning that it's not obligatory for a person to be in the state of purification in order to have a valid fast. Then he's going to mention the mas'ala of a person who breaks their fast and is permitted to break their fast in terms of the woman who is pregnant. He says, وَالْحَامِلُ إِذَا خَافَتْ عَلَى مَا فِي بَطْنِهَا أَفْطَرَتْ وَلَمْ تُطْعِمْ. Here the mas'ala of a person who is permitted to break their fast, and the first one here that he mentions is the pregnant woman who fears that if she continues her fast, that that maybe the baby inside of her stomach it will end up harming the baby. So in this mas'ala, where it is permissible for a person to break their fast for whatever reason, he's going to mention a few of them. Then in some cases they have to pay a penalty of what they call al-it'am, and we'll mention that later. And in some cases they don't have to pay a penalty. So what he says here is, what al-hamilu idha khafat ala ma fi batniha, if she fears what is in her stomach, aftarat, then it is then she can break her fast. If she's sure that it will, then it's obligatory for her to break her fast. Walam tut'im, and he says that she doesn't pay the penalty of what we call al-it'am, and we'll mention that a little later. So for the pregnant woman, if she breaks her fast based on the fact that she fears, and fear here, khafat means dhan, meaning that she thinks. She just has to have a 60-40 type of a thought, meaning there's probable cause. She has a good reason to believe. You can say a good reason to believe that it's going to harm her. Then she doesn't have to be 100% certain. She just has to have the the probability that it could happen. Then she is to break her fast. Walam tut'im, and she doesn't have to pay the penalty of al-it'am. And he mentions وَقَدْ قِيلَ تُطْعِمُ, and some there is an opinion that says that she should make it'am, but it's not the sound opinion. But the author mentions with qila, which means it's a weak opinion. Then he goes on to talk about the second person, وَالْمُرْضِعُ. Al-murdi'u is the woman who is breastfeeding. إِذَا خَافَتْ عَلَى وَلَدِهَا, if she fears that for her child, for example, a woman who is fasting and she experiences that when she fasts or during her fast, she's not producing any milk, and so she fears that the baby will not be able to sustain without her. That's why he says إِذَا خَافَتْ عَلَى وَلَدِهَا, if she fears for the child who she's breastfeeding, but under conditions, and she's going to break her fast under conditions. وَلَمْ تَجِدْ مَنْ تَسْتَعْجِرُهُ, and she cannot find anybody who will breastfeed for her, either by paying ujra, meaning somebody that she would pay to breastfeed for her, which was a common practice in the past, and I don't know if I doubt that it is a practice today, maybe in some other parts of the world. وَمَنْ تَسْتَعْجِرُهُ لَهُ أَوْ لَمْ يَقْبَلْ غَيْرَهَا, or that the baby will not accept anybody else. So here there's two conditions. Either she is to pay for somebody to do it, or she is to find somebody who would do it for free. For example, somebody that has the ability to breastfeed. Under these conditions, if she can, when these two conditions are present, meaning that she cannot find anybody she could pay to do it, or somebody who could do it for free, then, or she could find somebody to do it, but the child would not accept to be breastfed by that other person, then aftarat wa at'amat. Then she should break her fast, but she has to pay the penalty of it'am. And anytime, just to know, anytime in any one of these categories where they're going to break the fast, they're going to make it up as well. Yeah, they're going to make up their fast as well. Here, what he's talking about is just whether the hukm of her breaking the fast, and the hukm of whether or not she has to pay, the penalty of it'am. So in this issue here for the breastfeeding woman, he says aftarat, she breaks her fast, wa at'amat. Then he's going to make a similarity in ruling by saying وَكَذَلِكَ الشَّيْخُ الْحَرِمُ يُطْعِمُ إِذَا أَفْطَرَ. A sheikh means somebody who is very old in age and doesn't have the ability to fast because of old age. That's why it says الشَّيْخ الْحَرِمُ, one who is very old in age. يُطْعِمُ, he also is to pay a penalty إِذَا أَفْطَرَ. If he were to break his fast during Ramadan, then he must pay, he should pay al-it'am. Although some of the scholars mentioned during for the person who's old in age, then it is only mustahab for him, and it is not obligatory. Then he mentions وَمِثْلُهُ. Also he's going to mention the fourth category. So we have the first one, the hamil. Then we have the second one, which is the murdi'u, which is a breastfeeder. Then we have a shaykh al-harimu, the third one. And the fourth one, he says وَمِثْلُهُ مَنْ فَرَّتَ فِي قَضَاءِ رَمَضَانَ حَتَّى دَخَلَ عَلَيْهِ رَمَضَانٌ آخَرَ. The fourth person is a person who had qada to make up for Ramadan and didn't finish it until the next Ramadan came in. So for example, you missed 2 days of fasting, and then you didn't make them up until the next Ramadan entered in. So meaning the next Ramadan entered and you didn't make up those fasts yet, then you're going to do the penalty of it'am. So that's what he means, وَمِثْلُهُ مَنْ فَرَّتَ, meaning a person who was lax fi qada'i Ramadan, in making up their Ramadan, meaning that they were negligent, حَتَّى دَخَلَ عَلَيْهِ رَمَضَانٌ آخَرَ, until another Ramadan entered in, the next Ramadan entered upon them. Then that person has to make it'am. Now the author is going to clarify what it'am is. وَالْإِطْعَامُ فِي هَذَا كُلِّهِ مُدٌّ عَنْ كُلِّ يَوْمٍ يَقْضِيهِ. Al-it'amu is, in all of the categories that we mentioned, everybody that we mentioned, is to pay a muddun of ta'am. For example, like rice or wheat. And a mud is arba'atu amdad, which means 4 handfuls. And what do you mean by 4 handfuls? Four scoops, which means to place the 2 hands together. Don't close them too far, and don't open them too far, and then scoop up something. Four of those scoops in your hand are considered it'am. So what we mean by one, is considered a mud. So what we mean is you're going to join the 2 hands together so that the pinkies are touching each other, so it looks like a scoop. Scooping 1 of those, then 2, then 3, then 4. 4 of these is considered 1 mud. So for every day that a person has to make up, or for every day that a person has to make it'am, it means that a person does a mud for every day that they missed in fasting, or for every day that they broke their fast. So for the person who had 3 days of makeup in Ramadan, for example, and they did not make them up until the next Ramadan entered, then they have to pay 3 muds, which is 12 of those scoops that we previously mentioned. And that's the general principle of it'am. And according to the Maliki, it has to be paid. It has to be done in food. So it'am is to give that penalty that one is going to pay in food to somebody who is considered poor or needy.